Your sales style, Julian, it simply doesn't align with Apex Solutions' new data-driven, agile strategy, Evelyn Reed stated, her gaze fixed on a sleek tablet, one of several arranged neatly on her expansive glass desk. The wall behind her, a vast expanse of smart glass, pulsed with a real-time dashboard displaying an overwhelming array of company metrics. She didn't bother to look at me as she delivered the blow. We require leadership that is, shall we say, digital first. My name is Julian Vance. I am 58 years old. For 15 incredibly rewarding and at times challenging years, I had poured my heart and soul into leading the Midwest sales division for Apex Solutions, right here in Indianapolis. When I started, it was still Heartland Press, a very different kind of company. I built that team from the ground up, taking a territory that was barely breaking even and transforming it into the company's most consistent top revenue generator. My methods weren't rooted in complex software or predictive algorithms. They were built on something far more enduring: genuine relationships, firm handshakes, and an almost intuitive understanding of which publishers needed what and when. I loved books, the feel of them, the stories they held, a passion that began in a small local bookstore where I first started my career. By last year, my division, built on those very principles, was responsible for a staggering 60% of Apex Solutions' entire revenue. Not that anyone at the executive level, particularly the new wave, seemed to pay much attention until the quarterly reports, undeniable in their black and white, landed on their polished desks. When Evelyn Reed took over as CEO 6 months ago, parachuted in from some high-flying tech company in San Francisco, she arrived like a whirlwind, armed with slick PowerPoint presentations filled with buzzwords and accompanied by a cadre of consultants in sharply tailored, expensive suits. She was 42 driven and, as I quickly learned, had absolutely no prior experience in the publishing world. The board, however, seemed utterly captivated by her vision of a revolutionized Apex Solutions. Every meeting, every memo, every casual water cooler conversation suddenly revolved around digital transformation, synergistic V models, and disrupting the traditional publishing paradigm. It felt like a different language, one I wasn't keen to learn. I kept my head down, focused on my team, and continued to deliver the solid, consistent results that had always been my hallmark. Yet, I could feel her eyes on me during those interminable leadership meetings, a cool, appraising gaze that made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. I was the oldest director there, a relic from a bygone era in her eyes, I suppose. The only one who still meticulously maintained a physical desk calendar filled with handwritten notes, and who made it a point to visit clients in person, often with a small, thoughtful gift, rather than relying on impersonal Zoom calls scheduled by an algorithm. The summons, when it finally came, arrived on a crisp Monday morning. I'd just returned from a productive breakfast meeting. Her new assistant, a young man named Jason who always looked slightly overwhelmed, appeared at my office door, his discomfort palpable. "Ms. Reed would like to see you at 2 p.m. in the executive boardroom, Julian," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. The executive boardroom, she called it, though it felt more like her personal command center now. I thanked him, a knot of apprehension tightening in my chest, and forced myself to return to the call I was on with Marcus Thorne of Thorne Publishing Group, our largest and most valued client. We were in the final stages of a 5-year contract extension, a deal worth nearly $12 million. It was the kind of agreement that wasn't forged through email chains or data analytics, but because I'd made it a point to have dinner with Marcus every quarter for the past decade, discussing not just business, but his family, his passions, his vision for Thorne Group. The boardroom, or rather, Evelyn's CEO office as it was now essentially configured, had been completely transformed since her arrival. Gone was the sturdy mahogany conference table where countless deals had been hammered out and strategies debated. In its place stood her imposing glass desk, surrounded by minimalist white furniture that looked more artistic than comfortable. The far wall was now a massive digital display, currently showing a complex, shifting graph. Three people waited for me in the sterile silence. Evelyn, Jason, her assistant, hovering nervously by the door, and a woman from Human Resources, Ms. Albright, whom I vaguely recognized from a company-wide memo. Her expression was studiously neutral. I knew, with a sickening certainty that settled deep in my gut, what was coming before she even spoke. I tried to mention the Thorn contract, the good news I was bringing. Evelyn, I was just finalizing the Thorn Publishing Group extension. I began. That's a past metric, Julian. She cut in smoothly, her eyes still on one of her tablets. The future is built on new data. She finally looked up, a practiced, almost sympathetic smile gracing her lips. Julian, thank you for everything you've done for Apex Solutions over the years, she began, her hands clasped primly on the gleaming desk. But the board and I, have decided to move in a different direction with leadership for this division. I listened in stunned silence, the blood roaring in my ears as she launched into a pre-rehearsed explanation. She spoke of how my methods, while historically effective, were now considered outdated, and how the company desperately needed someone more aligned with their forward-thinking, digital-first strategic imperatives. Someone younger was the unspoken implication, though she was far too careful, too polished to actually voice that discriminatory thought aloud. There was no room for discussion, no acknowledgement of my contributions, no mention of the $12 million contract I'd just secured. I simply nodded, a cold fury mixing with a profound sense of betrayal. I thanked her for the opportunity, a hollow word that tasted like ash in my mouth, shook her offered hand, her grip brief and cool, and walked out without a single word of argument. What was there to say? 15 years of dedication, loyalty, and unwavering success, all dismissed in a sterile 15-minute meeting. What Evelyn, in her data-driven certainty, failed to comprehend was that in publishing, particularly with the old, established houses like Thorn Publishing Group that constituted a massive 80% of our consistent business, trust wasn't built through algorithms or automated email campaigns. It was forged through years of personal connection, through understanding their unique needs, through shared meals and conversations that went far beyond mere transactions. It was about people. I cleared out my desk while the rest of my team was at lunch. I couldn't face them, not yet. No dramatic goodbyes, no heated scene, just a quiet, dignified retreat, clutching a single box of personal belongings. The weight of it felt immense. But when I finally reached my car in the vast, impersonal company lot, I sank into the driver's seat and sat there for a long, long time, the box on the passenger seat beside me. I stared blankly at my phone. 3 missed calls from Marcus Thorne. His name glowed on the screen. He'd heard already. The news, it seemed, traveled faster than any digital directive. A wave of weariness washed over me, so profound it felt physical. I started at Apex Solutions back when it was still Heartland Press, a name that felt warmer, more connected to the books themselves. It was a much smaller operation then, a tight-knit group of just 20 employees and a handful of loyal, regional clients. I'd come over from Legacy Editions after they were unceremoniously bought out by one of the behemoth New York conglomerates, Metropolitan Media Corp, or MC as they like to be called. I'd walked away from a spacious corner office and a very comfortable 6-figure salary because I couldn't stomach what corporate publishing, with its relentless focus on the bottom line above all else, was doing to an industry I genuinely loved. Books were becoming mere commodities. Mr. Walter Sterling, the founder of Heartland Press, hired me personally. A man of integrity and passion. I remember his words as if it were yesterday, spoken in his book-lined office, the scent of old paper and binding glue a comforting aroma. "We don't need another bean counter, Julian," he'd said, his eyes twinkling with a fierce intelligence. "We need someone who understands, truly understands, that books are still made by people for people. Someone who cares about what's actually between the covers." He believed in the soul of publishing, not just its spreadsheets. For the first 5 grueling but exhilarating years, I rebuilt the sales division from scratch. I put 70,000 miles on my old sedan, crisscrossing the Midwest, visiting every independent publisher I could find between Ohio and Nebraska. I didn't just know their business needs. I knew the names of their spouses, their kids' latest achievements, the struggles they were facing. I attended their weddings, offered condolences at funerals, and raised a glass at retirement parties, not because it was a calculated strategic move, but because that's who we were at Heartland Press. We were a community bound by a shared love for the written word. By the time Mr. Sterling finally retired, a legend in his own right, and his son Edward Sterling took the helm, our division had grown by an astonishing 400%. Edward, or Mr. Sterling as I formally called him then, understood the business deeply, even if he, understandably, was a bit more inclined towards the numbers than his father had been. He was a good man, fair and insightful. He trusted me, respected my methods, and largely left me alone to run things my way, knowing I'd deliver. And I always did. 3 years ago, when the board first started muttering about bringing in outside leadership to modernize operations, a euphemism for shaking things up in ways that often disregarded proven success, Edward fought them. He stood by me, by our team, by the way we did business. But when cancer, swift and merciless, took him from us last year at the too young age of 58, there was no one left with his conviction, no one left to champion the old ways, the human ways. The cracks in the foundation started appearing even before Evelyn Reed was a name whispered in the hallways. Board meetings became increasingly uncomfortable, with words like antiquated and inefficient being thrown around in reference to our division. Sharp, pointed questions were raised about why our highly successful team hadn't aggressively leveraged every fleeting social media trend or implemented some new, supposedly revolutionary CRM optimization software that promised miracles but often delivered headaches. Samuel Chen, my bright and dedicated assistant director, a young man I'd been carefully grooming to eventually take over, started receiving invitations to high-level strategy meetings I was conspicuously not included in. He'd report back to me, his discomfort evident in his hushed tones and averted gaze, clearly uneasy with his new, unintentional role as a reluctant messenger. "They're talking about a major restructuring, Julian," he told me, his voice barely above a whisper, about 6 months ago, shortly after Evelyn's arrival. "You're planning to create an entirely separate digital sales team, completely independent of the traditional channels, our channels." I should have seen the writing on the wall then, clear as day. I should have paid more attention when they hired 3 new digital engagement specialists, whatever that meant, and unilaterally placed them on my team without so much as a courtesy consultation with me. Or when they began quietly reassigning some of my most significant long-term clients to this new, untested digital team, offering no explanation, no rationale. Marcus Thorne himself had called me, his voice tight with irritation, when they'd unceremoniously tried to shift his account away from me. "Some young kid, a fresh-faced boy, called me today, Julian," Marcus had boomed over the phone. "Told me he was my new primary account manager at Apex." He'd scoffed. Said they were streamlining their customer interface or some other piece of corporate jargon like that. A heavy pause. "What in blazes is going on over there, Julian? Has everyone lost their minds?" "Just some internal reorganization, Marcus," I told him, trying to sound reassuring, trying to quell the rising tide of my own unease. "Nothing for you to worry about." But I was worried. Deeply worried. I just didn't know how to fight a battle when I didn't even understand the weapons being used against me. This onslaught of impersonal data and disruptive jargon. The day after my termination, I sat in my home office, a sanctuary filled with books and memories, staring blankly at my silent phone. It wasn't silent because no one was calling. It was silent because I couldn't bring myself to answer it. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, 6 emails flagged as urgent. They were all from clients, industry contacts, friends, people who had somehow already heard the news of my sudden departure from Apex Solutions. The publishing world, for all its size, was a surprisingly small town. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even my wife, Catherine. She was visiting our daughter in Columbus for a few days, a much-needed break for her. I wanted to process this raw, stinging humiliation, alone first, before I had to voice it, make it real for her. The call that finally made me break my self-imposed silence, the one I knew I couldn't ignore, came late in the afternoon. It was Marcus Thorne. "What the hell happened, Julian?" he demanded, his voice a low growl, dispensing with any form of greeting. He sounded genuinely furious, and I knew that anger wasn't directed at me. They're going in a new direction, Marcus," I said, the corporate line tasting like ash in my mouth, a feeble echo of Evelyn's pronouncement. I could almost hear Marcus spit in disgust on the other end of the line. "A new direction?" he roared. "You are Apex Solutions to most of us out here in the trenches, Julian. You always have been." His voice softened slightly, a note of incredulity creeping in. "Do those fools in their glass tower even understand that? Do they have any idea what they've just done?" I didn't answer. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't sound bitter or self-serving. "I had a meeting with that new whippersnapper they assigned to Thorne Group yesterday," he continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "Drew, or something equally forgettable. Skinny tie, slicked back hair, reeked of ambition and inexperience." Marcus let out a derisive snort. "He spent a full 40 minutes, Julian, 40 goddamn minutes, showing me spreadsheets, analytics, and so-called engagement metrics on his shiny little tablet. Not once, not a single time, did he ask about our new historical fiction imprint, the one I told you, and only you, was make or break for us this entire fiscal year." I closed my eyes, a wave of profound weariness washing over me, a fatigue that had nothing to do with lack of sleep and everything to do with a deep, soul-crushing disappointment. This was the future Evelyn envisioned. "They'll figure it out eventually, Marcus," I said, though I didn't believe it for a second. "No, Julian, they won't," he replied, his voice heavy with a grim certainty. "Because people like that, the ones who worship at the altar of data and disruption, they never bother to learn what truly matters. They just impose their sterile systems and arrogantly expect everyone else to adapt, to fall in line." He was right, of course. After we hung up, the silence in my office felt heavier than before. I opened my laptop and reluctantly navigated to the email Apex Solutions HR, specifically Ms. Albright, had sent. It contained the details of my severance package: 6-month pay, a paltry 90 days of continued health insurance coverage, a lengthy and restrictive non-disparagement clause, and, most gallingly, a non-compete agreement that purported to prevent me from working with any of Apex's clients for a full year. I almost laughed out loud, a harsh, joyless sound. Did they really believe they could legally sever decades-old relationships, friendships forged in mutual respect and shared success, with a single, sterile document? The naivety, or perhaps the arrogance, was astounding. My phone buzzed again, vibrating insistently against the polished wood of my desk. It was Eleanor Jenkins from Clearwater Books this time. Another major client, another cherished friendship built painstakingly over many years of mutual trust and collaboration. "Julian, I just heard what happened," she said the moment I answered, her voice warm with genuine concern and a hint of outrage. "It's their profound loss, my dear, not yours." Her words were a small balm to my wounded pride. "When you're ready to talk about what's next, whenever that may be, you call me. We'll be here." By the time evening descended, casting long shadows across my quiet backyard, I had heard from 12 major clients. 12! Together, they represented over 40% of Apex Solutions' entire annual revenue. And every single one of them, in their own way, had expressed the exact same sentiment. Their loyalty was to me, Julian Vance, the man they knew and trusted, not to the faceless corporation, I would no longer be a part of. I sat on my patio as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, nursing a generous bourbon. An idea, a tiny, almost imperceptible seed that had been planted in my mind that morning amidst the shock and anger, had begun to sprout with each supportive phone call, each expression of unwavering loyalty. It was growing, taking root, unfurling with a surprising strength. Evelyn and her board had discarded me, cast me aside like an obsolete piece of machinery, because my methods, my deeply personal, relationship-focused approach, didn't fit into their shiny, new, impersonal digital strategy. They saw my reliance on building trust as a weakness, my client book filled with handwritten notes and personal milestones as inefficient, my insistence on face-to-face meetings as archaic. But what if those outdated methods, that inefficient focus on human connection, were precisely what those clients valued most? What if the very thing Evelyn Reed and her ilk saw as my greatest weakness was, in fact, my most unassailable strength? A slow smile touched my lips. I pulled out my phone, the screen illuminating my face in the gathering dusk, and made a call to my attorney, Alistair Finch, a sharp, insightful man I'd known for years. "Alistair," I said, my voice firmer than it had been all day. "It's Julian Vance. I need you to take a look at something for me. A rather interesting non-compete clause." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Apex let you go?" he asked, a note of genuine surprise in his usually unflappable tone. "They did, Alistair," I replied, a newfound sense of purpose hardening my resolve. "And I have a distinct feeling it might just be the best thing that's ever happened to me. I didn't want revenge, not really. That wasn't my style. Revenge was a bitter, unproductive emotion. I just wanted to keep doing what I'd always done, what I was good at, what I loved. Helping good publishers connect with the right partners, helping bring wonderful books into the world. And if Apex Solutions, in its infinite new wisdom, no longer valued that particular service, well, it was becoming abundantly clear that there were plenty of others who very much did." That night, for the first time since that cold, impersonal meeting in Evelyn's glass fortress, I slept soundly, a deep, dreamless sleep. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. 2 weeks after my unceremonious termination, I found myself sitting across from Alistair Finch in his impeccably organized downtown office. His space was a testament to his mind. Law books lined the walls with military precision. The furniture was minimalist yet classic, and an air of quiet, intellectual rigor pervaded the room. He had meticulously reviewed the non-compete agreement Apex Solutions had foisted upon me, and the news he had was, to put it mildly, unexpected. "It's essentially unenforceable, Julian," Alistair said, his voice calm and measured as he slid the offending document across his polished mahogany desk towards me. He adjusted his spectacles, a slight, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "They, or rather their legal counsel, made a rather crucial and frankly amateurish mistake." My heart gave a hopeful leap. "The scope of the restrictions is far too broad to be considered reasonable," he elaborated, tapping a perfectly manicured finger on a particularly dense paragraph. "The duration is excessively long, and most importantly, Julian, they cannot legally prevent you from utilizing your general knowledge, your accumulated skills, and your extensive experience within your chosen industry." A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. "So, if I were to, say, start my own consulting firm?" I asked, leaning forward, hope blossoming in my chest. "You absolutely could," Alistair nodded, the smile now a little more pronounced. "But," he added, raising a cautionary hand, "there's always a catch, isn't there?" My hopeful expression probably faltered. "They, meaning Apex Solutions, will almost certainly still sue you if you try to compete directly, or if they perceive you are poaching their clients, regardless of the weakness of this document." He leaned back in his leather chair. "Even if they ultimately lose the case, and I believe they would, They can make the entire process extraordinarily expensive, incredibly time-consuming, and emotionally draining for you. I considered this, the initial elation dimming slightly. Apex Solutions, under Evelyn Reed's aggressive leadership, undoubtedly had deep pockets and a board of directors who wouldn't hesitate for a second to use those resources to crush any perceived threat or to make an example of me. What if, I mused aloud, thinking through the potential angles, what if I don't approach any of their current clients directly? What if I simply make myself available? Let my reputation and the industry grapevine do the work? Alistair's smile returned, wider this time, a gleam of appreciation in his intelligent eyes. Now, Julian, he said, a note of approval in his voice. That is a different and far more strategically sound story entirely. Very next day, armed with Alistair's sage advice, I filed the necessary paperwork to establish Vance Strategy Partners. It was a deliberately understated name for my new one-man consulting venture. No splashy website, no glossy marketing materials, no aggressive outreach campaign, just a legitimate legal entity, a name on a shingle, ready and able to accept payments and provide valuable services to those who sought them out. 3 days later, as if on cue, my phone rang. It was Marcus Thorne. "Julian, I hear through the grapevine you've set up shop for yourself," he said without preamble, his voice carrying its usual confident boom. "News certainly travels fast in this business, Marcus," I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. It felt good to be wanted. In our world, Julian, news like that travels like wildfire through a dry forest, he chuckled. "Now listen," he continued, his tone shifting to business. "I need your help, your insights, with our upcoming winter catalog strategy. Apex's new team, the digital-first Wunderkinds," he said the term with palpable sarcasm, "are pushing us hard towards focusing almost exclusively on academic markets. It makes no sense for Thorne Group. My gut, my experience, tells me we should be doubling down on our new historical series, the one I told you about. It has immense potential. I need someone who truly understands both the hard numbers and the heart of the readers, Julian." "That's you." I hesitated, a pang of caution striking me despite Alistair's reassurances. "I'm still just figuring out my next steps, Marcus, getting my bearings." $15,000, Julian. He counted swiftly, anticipating my hesitation. "For 2 months of your strategic guidance and expertise. No direct competition with any services Apex might still be nominally providing, of course. Just you, helping us at Thorne Publishing Group make good, sound decisions. What do you say?" It was an incredibly generous offer, far more than I had expected for a first engagement. And it was carefully, almost surgically, structured to avoid any direct, actionable conflict with the terms of my non-compete, however flawed it might be. Still, a lifetime of cautious prudence made me pause. I need to think about it, Marcus. Give it some serious consideration." "Don't think too long, my friend," Marcus said, his voice firm but kind. "We're slated to make some major decisions on this next week, and I'd vastly prefer to have your wisdom in the room when we do." After I hung up, the weight of his offer, the trust it represented, settled comfortably on my shoulders. Later that day, I received an unexpected call from a number I recognized with a jolt. It was Sam, my former assistant director at Apex. "Julian, can we meet?" he asked, his voice hushed, almost furtive, a stark contrast to his usual confident tone. "Of course, Sam. What's on your mind?" "Not at the Apex office, definitely not," he said quickly. "Someplace quiet, off the beaten path. It's important. We agreed to meet at a small, unassuming coffee shop near Heron Lake Park, a place well away from the downtown business district and the ever-watchful eyes of the publishing scene." Sam looked visibly nervous when he arrived, his eyes darting around the quiet calf, constantly checking over his shoulder as if he expected to be followed. He fiddled with his coffee cup, his usual composure gone. "It's bad, Julian. Really bad," he said once we'd secured a secluded corner table, his voice barely above a whisper. They promoted me to your old position, senior account manager, he confirmed, a wry, mirthless smile touching his lips. But it's a sham. I'm just a figurehead, a token. All the real decisions, the important ones, are coming directly from Evelyn's new digital strategy team. They bypass me on everything significant. That's not entirely surprising, Sam, given the new direction, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral, though a fresh wave of anger at Evelyn's destructive approach simmered beneath the surface. No, Julian, you don't understand, Sam insisted, leaning in closer, his eyes wide with a mixture of frustration and concern. They're not just changing things. They're systematically, almost gleefully, dismantling everything you meticulously built over 15 years. His words hit me harder than I expected. They've already reassigned all of your major, long-term accounts, the bedrock of the division's success, to the new digital team, most of whom wouldn't know a well-crafted novel from a software manual. He shook his head, his expression grim. They're implementing a mandatory, overly complex CRM system that none of the older, experienced sales reps can properly navigate. It's a disaster. 3 of our best people you personally trained, have quit already in the past 2 weeks. They just couldn't take it anymore. I took a slow sip of my lukewarm coffee, carefully schooling my features, not wanting to reveal the turmoil his words were causing inside me. And the clients, Sam? I asked quietly. How are they reacting to all these improvements? Sam glanced around the coffee shop again, as if checking for eavesdroppers, before leaning in even further. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. They're furious, Julian. Absolutely incandescent with rage. Clearwater Books, Eleanor Jenkins, she's threatening to walk, to pull her entire multi-million-dollar account when her contract is up next month. And Marcus Thorne? He hasn't returned a single call from anyone at Apex in over a week. Radio silence. The quarterly sales projections, the ones they're preparing now, are looking catastrophic. Utterly catastrophic. And Evelyn? She's blaming it all on expected transitional turbulence and market readjustments. She's completely delusional. He hesitated for a moment, then his expression grew even more serious. But Julian, there's more. Something you really need to know. They're watching you closely. My blood ran cold. Watching me? What do you mean? Apex Legal had a closed-door meeting about your non-compete agreement just yesterday, Sam revealed, his eyes holding mine. They're deeply concerned, paranoid, even, that you might try to poach clients, that you're planning to go to war with them. Now I understood his almost comical paranoia, his furtive glances. He was risking his new, albeit figurehead, position, possibly his entire career at Apex, to warn me. The loyalty, the courage of this young man touched me deeply. Thank you for telling me this, Sam, I said, my voice filled with genuine gratitude. I appreciate you taking this risk. He nodded, a flicker of his old determination returning to his eyes. Then, he subtly slid a plain manila envelope across the table towards me. It landed with a soft thud. This is an updated client contact list, he murmured, his gaze fixed on the envelope. Personal emails, direct cell numbers, everything. He stood up abruptly, ready to leave. I didn't give you this, Julian, and we never met today. Understand? His meaning was crystal clear. He was protecting himself and me. After he hurried out of the coffee shop, I sat there for a long time, the untouched envelope lying on the table before me, a silent testament to Sam's loyalty and desperation. I turned it over and over in my hands, the weight of its contents, the potential it represented, almost palpable. Using this information, these direct lines to my former clients would be playing right into Apex Solutions' hands. It would be exactly what Evelyn Reed and her legal team feared, what they probably even expected, even hoped I would do. It would give them the ammunition they needed, the justification to launch a costly, messy legal battle against me, and very possibly to implicate and destroy Sam in the process. They had, in their own way, set a trap, anticipating my most likely next move. which meant I realized with a sudden clarity that I needed to make a different one entirely, a much smarter one. I picked up the envelope, stood, and walked towards the exit. Just before I pushed open the door, I paused, then deliberately placed the manila envelope, still sealed, still untouched, on an empty table near the entrance. Let someone else find it. It wasn't my path. A month crawled by, each day a test of my patience and resolve. I hadn't contacted a single one of Apex Solutions' clients, despite my phone ringing almost daily with increasingly desperate calls from publishers, many of them old friends, pleading for my help, my guidance. I deflected their requests politely but firmly, citing ongoing professional considerations and the complexities of my departure. The non-compete agreement might be legally flawed, as Alistair had assured me, but I wasn't quite ready to deliberately poke the bear and test its practical limits, not yet. Instead, I focused my energies on cultivating industry contacts outside of Apex Solutions' immediate client list. Small independent publishers struggling to find their footing, niche university presses with unique catalogs, literary agents looking for strategic guidance for their authors. It was work that wouldn't trigger any overt legal issues with Apex, but it kept me engaged, my mind sharp, and my finger firmly on the pulse of the field I loved and knew so well. It also paid the bills, which was a not insignificant consideration. Then came the invitation I hadn't expected, not in a million years. Mr. Arthur Kingsley, the venerable chairman of Apex Solutions Board of Directors, requested a private meeting. Not at the Apex corporate offices he'd specified, but at his exclusive private club downtown, the Keystone Club. I accepted, driven more by a potent cocktail of curiosity and a touch of apprehension than anything else. What could the chairman possibly want with me now? The Keystone Club was exactly as one might imagine. All dark, polished wood, hushed, important-sounding conversations conducted in lowered voices, and an air of old money and discreet power. Mr. Kingsley, a distinguished figure in his 70s with a full head of silver hair and an impeccably tailored suit, waited for me in a secluded private room. Two heavy crystal tumblers, already containing a generous measure of amber liquid, undoubtedly expensive scotch, sat on the small table between two plush leather armchairs. "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Julian," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble as he gestured for me to take the chair opposite his. His eyes, though, held a weariness I hadn't seen before. "I imagine you're wondering, with good reason, why I wanted to meet with you today." The thought had certainly crossed my mind more than once. He pushed one of the glasses of scotch towards me. I accepted it with a nod. "Things at Apex Solutions," he began, swirling the ice in his glass, "are not going as expected. An understatement of epic proportions if Sam's reports and the industry rumors were to be believed." I took a small, contemplative sip of the excellent scotch, saying nothing, letting the silence stretch. "To put it bluntly, Julian, revenue is down a staggering 38% this quarter compared to last year," Mr. Kingsley continued, his gaze fixed on the swirling liquid in his glass, as if seeking answers there. "Client retention, a metric you always excelled at, has fallen to its lowest point in the company's entire history." He finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine, a flicker of something akin to desperation in their depths. "The much-vaunted digital initiative, the one that was supposed to revolutionize our business model and propel us into a new era of profitability, has instead managed to alienate our core client base, the very people who kept us profitable for decades." "That's unfortunate, Mr. Kingsley," I replied, my tone carefully neutral, betraying none of the grim satisfaction that was starting to bubble up inside me. Mr. Kingsley studied me intently for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You don't seem particularly surprised, Julian." It wasn't a question. "Publishing, Mr. Kingsley," I said quietly, "is a relationship business. It always has been. It always will be. So I am learning, Julian. The hard way," he conceded, leaning forward slightly, his voice dropping. "The board is. deeply concerned about Ms. Reed's leadership, profoundly concerned. Her strategies, while they may have yielded results in the tech sector she came from, are proving to be woefully unsuited, even damaging, to the unique ecosystem of the publishing world. "Why are you telling me all this, Mr. Kingsley?" I asked, genuinely curious now. "Because, Julian," he said, his voice firming with a new resolve, "we, the board, would like you to come back to Apex Solutions." I stared at him, momentarily speechless, the scotch suddenly tasting bitter on my tongue. "We want you to return as Chief Revenue Officer, a newly created position. You would be above Evelyn Reed in the corporate hierarchy, with full authority over all sales and client relations." I continued to stare, trying to process the sheer audacity, the stunning reversal of this offer. "What about my replacement?" I finally managed to ask, thinking of Sam, the current senior account manager. "Young Samuel Chen is a good man, a loyal employee, I'm sure," Mr. Kingsley dismissed with a wave of his hand. "But he doesn't possess your depth of client relationships, your decades of industry knowledge, your gravitas." "And Evelyn?" I pressed, my mind reeling. "Ms. Reed? Would she simply accept this new arrangement? Me as her superior?" Mr. Kingsley's expression hardened, a flinty look entering his eyes. "Ms. Reed," he said, his voice cold and clipped, "would have no choice in the matter." The pieces of the puzzle suddenly, sickeningly, clicked into place. This wasn't just about this disastrous quarter's revenue figures, was it? This was something bigger, something that had been festering for much longer. "This isn't just about the current financial downturn, is it, Mr. Kingsley?" I asked, my voice quiet but firm. "This situation, this concern has been building for longer than just a few months." Mr. Kingsley sighed, a heavy, weary sound, the carefully constructed facade of the powerful chairman cracking for a moment to reveal the worried man beneath. "Evelyn Reed was Edward Sterling's hire, Julian," he admitted, his voice laced with a regret that sounded genuine. "It was his last major executive decision before his illness became unmanageable. The board, myself included, had certain reservations at the time. She was an outsider, with no publishing experience. But we deferred to Edward's judgment out of deep respect for him and all he had done for the company. After he passed," he continued, his gaze distant, "we felt obligated to give her the opportunity, the time to prove herself, to implement her vision." He paused, then met my eyes directly. "She hasn't, Julian. She has demonstrably failed." A cold realization dawned on me. "And my termination," I stated, more than asked. "My dismissal was not, in fact, fully approved by the entire board beforehand, was it?" "We were informed after the fact, Julian," Mr. Kingsley confirmed, his voice tight. "Just as we were informed, not consulted, about several other significant organizational changes Ms. Reed implemented unilaterally." I sat back in the plush leather chair, the full ugly picture finally snapping into sharp focus. Evelyn Reed hadn't just been implementing a new digital strategy. She had been systematically clearing out anyone loyal to Edward Sterling, anyone who represented the old ways, replacing them with her own people, consolidating her own power base. My dismissal wasn't about being outdated or resistant to digital transformation. It was about removing a key figure of the previous leadership, someone with deep roots and strong loyalties within the company and the industry. I was a threat to her absolute control. "The offer is exceptionally generous, Julian," Mr. Kingsley pressed on, seemingly oblivious to my internal revelations. "Double your previous salary. Full autonomous control of all sales and client relationship divisions. And, crucially, the board's complete and unwavering backing to rebuild your team to restore Apex Solutions to its former strength." It was, on the surface, everything I should have wanted. Vindication, power, financial security, the chance to undo the damage. A triumphant return. I will need some time to consider your offer, Mr. Kingsley," I said, my mind in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. "Of course, Julian. Understandable," he replied, though a flicker of impatience crossed his face. "But please, don't take too long. The situation at Apex is deteriorating rapidly. We need to act decisively." On the drive home from the Keystone Club, the city lights blurring past my car windows, I turned the conversation, the astounding offer, over and over in my mind. The board hadn't just suddenly realized they'd made a colossal mistake with my termination. Some of them, perhaps Mr. Kingsley included, had likely known it was wrong, or at least deeply misguided, from the very beginning. But they had lacked the courage, or perhaps the collective will, to stop Evelyn then. Now that her disastrous decisions were directly impacting their bottom line, their stock prices, their reputations, suddenly they wanted me back. And there was something else, something Mr. Kingsley hadn't said explicitly, but which I had understood with chilling clarity from the undercurrent of his words, the steel in his voice when he spoke of Evelyn. They didn't just want me back to fix the sales figures. They wanted me to be their hatchet man. They wanted me to come back and systematically dismantle everything Evelyn Reed had built, to purge her appointees, and eventually, to be the instrument of her own downfall. They didn't want me for my relationship-building skills, not truly. They wanted me for my client list, for the loyalty those clients held for me, and for the swift, decisive cleanup they believed I could execute. The realization didn't make me angry, not anymore. It just made me absolutely, unequivocally certain about what I needed to do next. My path was clear. I declined Mr. Kingsley's offer the next morning with a brief, polite, and unequivocal email. His response arrived within minutes, an even more lucrative offer, increasing the proposed compensation package significantly. He clearly wasn't used to being turned down. I didn't reply to that second email. There was no point. Instead, I picked up my phone and made 3 crucial calls. The first was to Marcus Thorne. "Marcus, it's Julian," I said when he answered. "I'm ready to discuss that consulting arrangement we talked about." "Excellent news, Julian," he boomed. "I knew you'd come around. When can you start?" "Actually, Marcus," I continued, "I'd like to suggest a slightly different, perhaps more ambitious, approach than just a straightforward consultancy for Thorne Publishing Group." "I'm listening, Julian." "You have my full attention," he said, a note of intrigued curiosity in his voice. "I won't be consulting exclusively for Thorne Group or any single publisher for that matter," I explained, laying out the idea that had been solidifying in my mind for weeks. "Instead, I'm proposing we form a collective, a new kind of entity. Let's call it the Independent Publishers Guild, a consortium, if you will, of independent publishers who are willing to share resources, collaborate on distribution channels, and pool market intelligence to compete more effectively. No long-term, restrictive contracts, no suffocating corporate bureaucracy like at Apex, I emphasized. Just publishers helping fellow publishers, with me acting as the facilitator, the connector, the strategic guide." There was a thoughtful silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I feared I had overplayed my hand. Then Marcus asked, "How many other publishers have you approached with this guild idea, Julian?" "None yet, Marcus," I replied honestly. "You're the very first call I've made." "Because Thorne Publishing Group was your biggest client at Apex?" he guessed. "No, Marcus," I corrected gently, "because I trust your judgment implicitly. You've always had a keen sense for what works in this industry. If you think this guild model is viable, if you believe it has merit, then I'll move forward with it. If not, I'll stick to more traditional consulting." Marcus Thorne didn't hesitate for a second. "I'm in, Julian," he declared, his voice resonating with enthusiasm. "Count Thorne Publishing Group in, and I can think of at least 5 other solid, independent publishers who would jump at the chance to join something like this, especially with you at the helm." My heart soared. This was the validation I needed. My second call was to Eleanor Jenkins at Clearwater Books. As I had hoped and frankly expected, she not only embraced the concept of the Independent Publishers Guild with open arms, but immediately began suggesting insightful refinements to the proposed structure. She envisioned a shared digital platform, for instance, that would give the smaller member publishers the marketing reach and analytical capabilities of a much larger organization, all without them having to sacrifice their cherished independence or unique identities. Her input was invaluable. The third call was to Alistair Finch, my attorney, to ensure that this new, ambitious plan wouldn't inadvertently violate the still lingering, though toothless, non-compete agreement with Apex Solutions. You're not directly working for their individual clients in a way that competes with the service Apex itself offers, Julian. Alistair confirmed after I detailed the Guild's proposed structure and purpose. You are, in essence, creating an entirely new entity, a collaborative organization that their former clients and others are choosing, of their own volition, to join and support. He paused, then added with a hint of admiration. It's a subtle distinction, Julian, but a legally meaningful and, I must say, rather elegant one. Within 2 short weeks, the Independent Publishers Guild, or the Guild as we quickly began to call it, had 7 founding members. All of them were respected former Apex Solutions clients who had either already severed ties with Apex or were actively planning to do so when their existing contracts expired. The frustration with Evelyn Reed's regime was, it seemed, even more widespread than I'd imagined. Each founding member contributed a modest sum to an initial operational fund, an amount that would comfortably cover my salary as the Guild's director and the basic infrastructure needed to get us off the ground. The true genius of the plan, if I could call it that, wasn't just about building a competing organization to Apex. It was about creating something fundamentally different, something Apex Solutions, with its rigid corporate structure and top-down C-suite mandates, couldn't easily replicate or counter. We were building a cooperative, a genuine partnership, where independent publishers maintained their autonomy and distinct voices while gaining the significant benefits of collective resources, shared knowledge, and a unified front in a challenging marketplace. No one appointed me CO or bestowed upon me some fancy, inflated title. I was simply the facilitator, the central connector, the experienced hand who understood what each member publisher needed and who knew how to help them get it, or connect them with another member who could. We rented a modest but functional office space in Willow Creek Business Park, a newer development comfortably removed from the high-rent downtown business district where Apex Solutions and other large corporate publishers were clustered. It felt good to be building something new from the ground up on my own terms. I hired 2 essential staff members to start. A bright, energetic recent college graduate named Sarah to handle communications, social media, and the myriad administrative tasks, and a seasoned, veteran publishing operations manager, a wonderful woman named Martha, who had recently retired from a long career, but, as she put it, wasn't quite ready to stop making good books happen entirely. Her experience was invaluable. Word of the Guild spread like the proverbial wildfire through the close-knit, often gossipy, publishing community. By the end of our first month of operation, 3 more independent publishers had eagerly joined our ranks. By the end of the second month, we were already outgrowing our initial office space and had to begin looking for larger quarters. The momentum was exhilarating. Throughout this period of rapid growth, I was meticulously careful never to directly solicit Apex Solutions' remaining clients. I didn't need to. They came to us, increasingly disillusioned and frustrated. They were drawn by the burgeoning success stories they were hearing about the Guild from their industry colleagues, and repelled by the continuing frustrations they were experiencing with Apex's impersonal, digital-first approach, an approach that consistently ignored, or actively devalued, the crucial personal relationships that lay at the very heart of the publishing business. Sam called me one evening in late September, about 2 months after the Guild had officially launched. His voice was still hushed, but there was a new note of something I couldn't quite decipher, perhaps a reluctant admiration. "They know what you're doing, Julian," he said without any preamble. "The Guild. It's all anyone at Apex is talking about, in whispers mostly. Evelyn is apoplectic," he continued. "Absolutely furious. Beyond furious, actually. I've never seen her like this. She's been in closed-door meetings with Apex Legal all week. She's talking about aggressive legal action against you, against the guild. We haven't violated any agreements, damn, I replied calmly, though my heart rate ticked up a notch. Alistair Finch has assured me of that. That won't stop her from trying to make your life miserable, Sam warned. He paused, then added, there's a big board meeting tomorrow. The quarterly results are being presented. It's going to be a bloodbath, Julian. The numbers are even worse than predicted. That's not really my concern anymore, Sam, I said, a touch more gently than I intended. I know, but… He hesitated. Then the words rushed out. I just thought you should know. And I also wanted to ask, is there, by any chance, room for one more experienced publishing professional at your new venture? He took a deep breath. I've reached my breaking point here at Apex, Julian. I can't be a part of this dismantling any longer. I smiled to myself, a genuine, unreserved smile. Everything was proceeding almost exactly as I had quietly anticipated. Not because I was a vengeful man seeking to destroy my former employer that had never been my goal, but simply because I understood the intricate, nuanced soul of the publishing industry in a way that Evelyn Reed, with all her spreadsheets and algorithms, never would and likely never could. Come by the new guild office tomorrow morning, Sam, I told him warmly. We'll talk. I think we'll have a lot to discuss. The Apex Solutions quarterly earnings call in early October told the entire grim story. Numbers, as they say, never lie, especially when they're splashed across financial news screens. Apex Solutions reported a catastrophic 45% drop in revenue compared to the same quarter the previous year. A nosedive. Their stock, predictably, plummeted 17% in a single day of trading. The market had rendered its brutal verdict on Evelyn Reed's digital-first revolution. I didn't listen to the earnings call myself. I had more important things to do. I was in a vibrant, productive strategy meeting with 15 enthusiastic guild member publishers, collectively planning our innovative, collaborative approach to the upcoming major industry conference in Chicago. The energy in our new, larger meeting room was palpable, a heady mix of excitement, determination, and shared purpose. But Marcus Thorne, bless his supportive heart, texted me the lowlights of the Apex call in real time. Evelyn blaming unforeseen market disruption and transitional operational challenges. Standard corporate doublespeak. Absolutely no mention of the enormous elephant in the room, the fact that their biggest, most profitable clients have jumped ship in droves and joined the guild. He ended the text with a winking emoji and "Congrats, Julian. You magnificent bastard." I chuckled. Later that same afternoon, as I was reviewing booth designs for the Chicago conference, my personal cell phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Is this Julian Vance? A crisp, professional woman's voice inquired when I answered. Speaking, I replied. Mr. Vance, this is Victoria Albright. I'm calling on behalf of the Apex Solutions Board of Directors. Her tone was clipped, formal, and utterly devoid of any warmth. The bearer of bad news, or perhaps desperate pleas. I am calling to inform you, Mr. Vance, she continued, her voice like ice, that the board has voted, effective immediately, to formally waive your non-compete agreement with Apex Solutions. A small, almost involuntary smile touched my lips. So the threats had finally given way to capitulation. Furthermore, Ms. Albright pressed on, as if reading from a script. We have also authorized our legal team to prepare and issue a cease and desist order regarding what we consider to be your ongoing and tortious interference with our established client relationships. The stick after the carrot. How predictable. I waited, letting the silence stretch, deliberately making her uncomfortable. Do you have any response to this information, Mr. Vance? She finally asked, a hint of impatience creeping into her otherwise controlled tone. Just one question for you and the board, Ms. Albright, I said finally, my voice calm and steady. Have you, or anyone on the board, actually spoken directly with your former clients recently? I don't mean through your new, inexperienced account managers or by impersonal online satisfaction surveys. A pointed pause. Have you actually sat down, face to face, with people like Marcus Thorne of Thorne Publishing Group or Eleanor Jenkins of Clearwater Books, and asked them, genuinely asked them, why they chose to leave Apex Solutions? That line of inquiry is not relevant to the matter at hand, Mr. Vance, which is your interference, Ms. Albright began, her voice rising slightly. On the contrary, Ms. Albright, I interrupted, my tone still quiet, but now infused with an unshakable conviction. It's the only thing that's truly relevant. They didn't leave Apex because I started something new, something appealing. They left because Apex Solutions, under its current leadership, stopped valuing what mattered most to them: trust, partnership, and a genuine understanding of their business. You pushed them away. There was a long, loaded silence on the other end of the line. The board meeting is, in fact, still in session, Mr. Vance, Ms. Albright said after a moment, her voice suddenly less certain, less strident. Perhaps you would care to join us via conference call and explain your perspective on these matters directly to the full board? An olive branch, offered from a position of considerable weakness. I appreciate the belated invitation, Ms. Albright, I replied, allowing a touch of irony into my voice, but I'm afraid I'm rather busy. I'm in the middle of my own meeting right now, with 15 highly successful independent publishers who have proactively chosen a different, more collaborative path forward. She was silent for so long this time that I actually thought the call might have dropped. I see, she said at last, her voice small, almost a whisper. And then she quietly hung up. The cease and desist order from Apex Solutions never arrived. 3 days later, the main headline on the front page of the business section of the Indiana Chronicle read, Apex Solutions, CEO steps down amid severe financial turbulence and shareholder revolt. Evelyn Reed's reign was over. 6 months after launching the Independent Publishers Guild, we moved into our new, permanent offices. It was a beautifully renovated historic warehouse space in the revitalized Union Station district, a vibrant and growing part of the city. The exposed brick, high ceilings, and open-plan layout fostered the sense of collaboration and community that was the cornerstone of the Guild. We now had 23 active member publishers, with a growing waiting list of other respected independents from across the nation eager to join our innovative consortium. We had expanded far beyond Indiana, now including small and mid-sized publishers from all corners of the Midwest and even a few from the coasts. The industry had taken significant notice. The Guild and our unique model had been prominently featured in glowing articles in both the Publishing Herald and, much to my surprise, in the business section of the Financial Standard. The Relationship Revolution: How One Man's Vision is Reshaping Independent Publishing, one particularly flattering headline had proclaimed. I hadn't set out to create a movement or to start a revolution. I had simply wanted to preserve and to practice what I knew deep in my bones truly worked in the world of books. But sometimes, I mused, the old time-tested ways become revolutionary all over again when people collectively remember, or are reminded, why those ways mattered so profoundly in the first place. Mr. Arthur Kingsley called me on a bright Tuesday morning. Apex Solutions, he informed me, had a new CEO, someone promoted from within their ranks, a seasoned veteran who had been with the company for decades, someone who understood the industry. A sensible choice, finally. Julian, he said, his voice lacking its former urgency, now tinged with a weary hope. We at Apex would like to formally discuss the possibility of Apex Solutions joining your consortium, the Guild. No preamble, no beating around the bush. A straightforward, almost humble request. I smiled to myself, a slow, knowing smile. The irony was almost too perfect. That's not quite how the Guild works, Mr. Kingsley, I replied gently but firmly. We're not structured to acquire or be joined by members of Apex's significant size and corporate structure. It would change our fundamental nature. Ah, perhaps. Perhaps some form of strategic partnership arrangement then? He counted, clearly not ready to give up entirely. I will, of course, bring your inquiry to our leadership council for discussion, Mr. Kingsley. I told him, though I already knew, with a fair degree of certainty, what their answer would likely be. The very publishers who had flocked to the guild had done so precisely to escape the kind of impersonal, top-heavy corporate approach that Apex Solutions, even under new leadership, still largely represented. After hanging up, I took a slow walk through our bustling, open-plan office space. No grand executive suite for me here, no imposing glass desk. Just a simple, functional workstation among the others, where I could be an integral part of the daily ebb and flow, the vital conversations and collaborations that kept us all connected to what truly mattered. Sam, now our indispensable director of member operations, looked up from his workstation as I passed, a questioning look on his face. He'd overheard my end of the call. "Everything okay, Julian?" "Just fine, Sam." "Better than fine," I nodded, a sense of deep contentment settling over me. That was Apex Solutions. They want to join the guild. Sam stared at me for a beat, then threw back his head and laughed, a hearty, unrestrained sound that echoed through the office. "Talk about coming full circle," he exclaimed, still chuckling. "Unbelievable." Later that afternoon, I found myself driving out to Heron Lake Park. I sat on a familiar weathered bench by the water's edge, the same tranquil spot where I used to come and clear my head when the problems and pressures at Apex, or Heartland Press as it was then, seemed overwhelming. I remembered sitting here with Mr. Walter Sterling years ago, discussing his dreams for Heartland. But today, there were no pressing problems to solve, no corporate battles to strategize. Just a quiet, profound satisfaction in knowing that what I had helped build here with the guild would last. Not because it was particularly revolutionary or disruptive in the way Evelyn Reed had envisioned disruption, but because it was built on something far more enduring, something that never really changes or goes out of style. People trusting people, people valuing genuine connection, people who have earned that trust through integrity and dedication. Sometimes, I reflected, as a heron gracefully took flight across the shimmering water, getting fired is the best damn thing that can happen to you. Not because it leads to some dramatic, Hollywood-style revenge, but because it can force you, challenge you, and ultimately empower you to build something far more authentic, more meaningful, and more true to yourself than what you were compelled to leave behind. And that, I realized, was a success far sweeter than any quarterly earnings report.